When Forrest was a child, he had to wear leg braces due to a spinal condition. These braces made him wobble as he walked, often attracting curious and judgmental looks from passers-by. Forrest's mother wanted him to understand that he was no different from anyone else. However, when it was time for him to start school, the principal refused to admit him because of his low IQ. According to government regulations, Forrest was supposed to attend a special school, determined to get him a normal education. Forrest's mother spent that entire night persuading the principal, while Forrest sat quietly outside the door. On Forrest's first day of school, his mother repeatedly reminded him to study hard. The school bus driver would pick him up and drop him off every day. Despite many empty seats, none of the children wanted to sit with Forrest because he seemed slow-witted, all except for a girl named Jenny, who was smart and kind-hearted. Jenny took the initiative to befriend Forrest. They read books together and climbed trees to watch the stars. Everyone thought Forrest would never learn to walk properly. Then one day, a group of kids came to bully him again. They picked up rocks and threw them at Forrest, and Jenny, unable to stop them, could only tell Forrest to run. Forrest started to run, breaking free from the constraints of his leg braces. At that moment, he was like a wild horse, leaving the bullies stunned. He ran so fast that the kids on bicycles couldn't catch up with him. From that moment, Forrest fell in love with running. No matter where he wanted to go, he would run. Forrest often visited Jenny at her house to play. Each time, Jenny would grab his hand and lead him into the dense cornfields. Jenny, too, came from a single-parent family. Her father, embittered by life's hardships, would often beat and scold her. Poor Jenny would kneel and pray sincerely to God. Perhaps her heartfelt prayers touched God's heart. The police soon arrived. Jenny was no longer forced to live with her father. Now, she lived with her grandmother in a run-down trailer, conveniently close to Forrest's house. On stormy nights, Jenny would sneak up to Forrest's room, and they would sleep together. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. Forrest and Jenny were now in high school. The bullies even bought a beat-up car in an effort to catch Forrest. As always, Jenny would shout for Forrest to run, but two legs couldn't outrun four wheels. Just as they were about to catch him, Forrest veered into a nearby field, where a school game was in progress. Forrest ran with lightning speed, surpassing everyone on the field, leaving the coaches in shock. Forrest's incredible running speed earned him a college scholarship to play football. Though many saw Forrest as a fool, he became the hope of both the team and the entire school. Spectators cheered for his remarkable speed. Forrest didn't understand the rules of the game. He only knew to run as fast as he could once he got the ball. Even after crossing the goal line, he would keep running. With Forrest on the team, they won every championship. Forrest's speed led to his selection for the All-American team. He didn't grasp the significance, only that the team's perks were quite good, including free food and drink every day. The only downside was frequent meetings with an old man named Kennedy, who happened to be the President of the United States at the time. 5 years passed quickly. Forrest's astounding running talent earned him a college degree, making his mother proud. On graduation day, he was drafted into the army. Without a moment's rest, he embarked on military life. On his first day, he faced a familiar scenario. No one on the bus wanted to sit with him, except for Bubba. In the army, Forrest and Bubba became best friends. They shined shoes together and scrubbed floors with toothbrushes. Bubba's family had been shrimpers for generations. His mother was an exceptional shrimp cook, and so was his grandmother. It seemed shrimp was ingrained in their family's DNA. Bubba had always dreamed of owning his own shrimp boat. One night, while falling asleep, a fellow soldier tossed Forrest an adult magazine. To his surprise, he saw Jenny's picture in it. Convinced that Jenny was in trouble, Forrest used his leave to visit her. He found Jenny working as a lounge singer in a bar. Seeing her on stage, Forrest smiled, remembering her dream to become a singer. But reality was harsh. The audience jeered at Jenny like clowns, prompting Forrest to step in and beat them up, costing Jenny her job. Jenny had been through a lot. Her mother died early, and her father was abusive. Her dreams had been eroded by life's challenges, leading her to a life of hardship. She didn't want Forrest to see her in such a state. Jenny hastily hailed a passing car to leave, not knowing Forrest was about to head to Vietnam. He had come to say goodbye. Jenny turned back to Forrest, asking only one thing. If he ever found himself in danger, he should run away. Forrest took her words to heart and promised to remember them. Before long, Forrest and his best friend Bubba boarded a helicopter bound for Vietnam. Their commanding officer was the handsome Lieutenant Dan, who came from a long line of soldiers. Every man in his family had died in various wars, and Dan's greatest wish was to follow in their footsteps, dying heroically in battle. The war in Vietnam was not what Forrest had imagined. He never saw an enemy, nor did he witness any grand displays of gunfire. Instead, they spent their days patrolling and advancing, to the point of playing with grenades out of boredom and sending Forrest into grenade holes. This monotonous routine continued until the rainy season began. For 4 months, they experienced every type of rain imaginable. Day and night, they were soaked, even while sleeping. Bubba dreamed of starting a shrimping business with Forrest after they left the army, and Forrest happily agreed. Bubba had it all planned out. They would get a loan, buy a shrimp boat, and live on it, splitting all the earnings and eating all the shrimp they wanted. Forrest thought Bubba was the smartest businessman he knew. One day, the rain stopped abruptly. They thought the weather had cleared, only to be ambushed by the enemy. Shells exploded around them, and they found their bullets useless after being soaked for so long. With their comrades severely wounded, Lieutenant Dan ordered a retreat. But Forrest didn't understand what that meant. As everyone yelled at him to run, he remembered Jenny's advice and sprinted away, outpacing even the bullets. Realizing he had left Bubba behind, Forrest turned back into the chaos to find him. He stumbled upon many fallen comrades, who now saw him as a savior, despite previously mocking him. One exception was Lieutenant Dan, who had lost his legs. He refused Forrest's help, wishing to die on the battlefield as his ancestors had. But Forrest, oblivious to heroism, valued his friend's life above all else. As he carried Lieutenant Dan to safety, Forrest felt a sharp pain in his buttocks but ignored it, determined to find Bubba, despite the high risk from an imminent airstrike called by Dan. Forrest returned to the battlefield. In the dense forest, Forrest found Bubba, gravely wounded. He carried Bubba back through the jungle, but Bubba succumbed to his injuries. His last words were, "I want to go home." Forrest later learned that the pain in his buttocks was from a bullet wound. The only upside to his injury was the endless supply of ice cream he received in the hospital. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Dan was devastated, feeling his life was over without his legs. He pulled Forrest from sleep one night, expressing his hatred for being saved. He believed he should have died in battle like his ancestors, and now felt like a worthless cripple. With no purpose left, Dan struggled to find direction in life. Forrest, on the other hand, took up table tennis at the suggestion of his fellow soldiers. He discovered a natural talent for the sport and quickly excelled, drawing crowds of spectators at the rehabilitation center. His skill earned him a spot on the national team, leading to performances across the country to boost troop morale. Forrest's prowess in table tennis caught the attention of the nation, and he was chosen to represent the United States in China. This event, known as ping-pong diplomacy, marked a significant thaw in U.S.-China relations. Upon his return, Forrest received a Medal of Honor from the president, making his mother immensely proud. After recovering and returning home, the first thing Forrest did was fulfill the dream of his best friend, Bubba. He took all his savings and bought a second-hand shrimp boat. However, shrimping wasn't as easy as Bubba had made it sound. His first haul yielded only a few shells and some snails. The second one barely caught 5 shrimp. One day, Forrest spotted Lieutenant Dan on the shore. Dan had once said that if Forrest ever became a shrimp boat captain, he would become his first mate. True to his word, Dan joined Forrest, despite their best efforts. Their luck did not improve initially. They caught everything but shrimp, cans, toilet seats, helmets, and old shoes. Dan believed their poor fortune was due to not praying to God, so they went to church to pray daily. Perhaps their sincerity touched the divine, because one night, a violent storm hit. While Forrest was terrified, Dan seemed elated, climbing the mast and shouting into the storm, cursing life's unfairness and challenging God to take his life. That storm marked a turning point. The hurricane destroyed all the shrimp boats along the coast, except the Jenny, which had braved the storm. With no competitors, Forrest and Dan quickly made a fortune, eventually buying 12 more boats and founding the largest shrimp company in the country. As life improved, Lieutenant Dan found new hope in Forrest. He saw that the man who had saved his life once was now saving him again. Dan finally expressed his gratitude to Forrest, and Forrest could see that Dan had made peace with his life. One day, Forrest received a call from his mother, informing him that she was gravely ill. Forrest immediately rushed home, arriving just in time to be with her in her final moments. After his mother's passing, Dan helped Forrest manage the company. One day, Forrest received a letter informing him that Dan had made an investment for him, buying stock in a company called Apple. This investment ensured Forrest never had to worry about money again. He donated much of his wealth to charity, following his mother's advice that wealth only needs to be enough. He also gave a substantial amount to a hospital and half of his company's shares to Bubba's family. Bubba's mother no longer had to cook shrimp for others. She could now enjoy having others cook for her. Despite his generosity, Forrest remained a billionaire, spending his days mowing the lawn and thinking of Jenny. One day, his dream came true. Jenny returned to his life. Perhaps she had nowhere else to go, or maybe she was tired of her life as a wandering bird. Jenny stayed at Forrest's home, sleeping often, as if Forrest was the only person in the world she could trust. Forrest felt a happiness he had never known before and shared all his experiences with Jenny as they walked and talked, eventually finding themselves at Jenny's childhood home. Jenny, overwhelmed with emotion, threw her shoes and then began hurling rocks at the house that had haunted her memories. She hated the place that had left such deep scars on her soul. Some people spend a lifetime healing from their childhood, and for Jenny, this was a painful release. That night, Forrest mustered the courage to propose to Jenny. She declined, not because she felt Forrest was unworthy of her as she once did, but because she now felt unworthy of him. That night, in the rain, she found Forrest just like she had as a child, finally admitting she loved him. The next morning, she quietly left, unable to escape the shadows of her past. She knew Forrest would be a good husband, but she couldn't see herself as a good wife. Once again, Forrest found himself alone, staring at the clean, empty bed that seemed as if Jenny had never been there. Forrest put on his hat, seeking answers, and he began to run. He ran out of town, past the high school football field, and he kept running across the entire state of Alabama. When he reached the edge of the land, he turned around and ran to the other end of the continent. He slept when he was tired, ate when he was hungry, and ran for 3 whole years. Over time, more and more people started paying attention to Forrest. Even Jenny, who was trying to rebuild her life, saw him on TV. Nobody knew why he was running, and many reporters asked him about it. Forrest's answer was always the same. He just liked running. Some people saw Forrest as a spiritual leader and began to follow him. As the crowd of followers grew, so did Forrest's fame. People started seeking inspiration from Forrest. A businessman asked him for a slogan, and a casual remark from Forrest inspired a wildly successful bumper sticker. Another man, selling t-shirts, was about to go bankrupt and hoped Forrest could help when a truck splashed mud all over him. Forrest wiped his face with the t-shirt, inadvertently creating a design that would become an iconic American brand. One day, Forrest recalled something his mother had said, and he decided to stop running. He had been running for 3 years, 2 months, 14 days, and 16 hours. Having found the answer he was looking for, Forrest ended his running journey. Back home, Forrest received a letter from Jenny. Without hesitation, he followed the address to find her. Jenny was full of life and no longer the person she used to be. She had kept a scrapbook of all the news about Forrest over the years and revealed that she had a little boy. When Forrest asked about the father, Jenny said the father was standing right in front of her. Shocked, Forrest stepped back, fearful that the boy might be like him, intellectually challenged. But Jenny reassured him that their son was very smart, which relieved Forrest. Forrest couldn't believe that he and Jenny had created this beautiful child together. However, Jenny also shared some bad news. She was terminally ill. In the remaining time, Forrest fulfilled his lifelong dream of marrying Jenny. Lieutenant Dan attended the wedding, congratulating Forrest. He had a new pair of legs and had found his own love. Their happiness was short-lived. As Jenny soon passed away, Forrest buried her under the tree where they had played as children and used a bulldozer to tear down her old house. Forrest's life continued with hope, centered around his beloved son. He spent his days playing ball, fishing, and reading with him. On his son's first day of school, Forrest put him on the bus and sat quietly, waiting for him to return.